this recovery work around reclaiming myself after experiencing so many years of emotional and psychological abuse, I realized that the disorder was associated with my throat chakra, my throat energy center, and me speaking my truth and sharing my voice with the world.
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And as always, it's my honor and pleasure to be with you here on another brand new episode. I'm so excited. We've got a really fascinating topic, and I know you'll be as excited to learn about it as I am. I think a lot of people struggle with this one, even if they're saying, my upbringing was perfect. And I like to think that a lot of people just don't know that maybe it wasn't quite as perfect as you think. And we've got an amazing guest on, Pi Venus Winslow. She's a published author, public speaker, and transformational life coach for those recovering from narcissistic upbringing. Pi's mission is to empower others to reclaim their authentic selves and live intentionally free from codependency and narcissistic abuse. Now, you might be going, Sharon, what's that have to do with autoimmune? Telling you, it has to do a lot. Since 2014, we've been doing this show, and I have learned so much that recovery from autoimmune is more than just the physical body recovery. It's all about the mental, emotional, spiritual, and your being, your core, yourself, your self-worth, your self-understanding. And over the course of 45 years, our guest, she is the daughter of a malignant narcissistic mother, and she has a lifetime of experience. I hate to read that in her bio, but it's true. She has a lifetime of experience in understanding the emotional and psychological effects of being raised by a narcissistic parent. And we're going to be talking about narcissism in lots of ways, mostly parenting, but you can have narcissists in your life in other ways that can also affect your well-being and your wellness. So thanks for being on the show, Pi. It's so great to see you.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm thrilled to be here and to be talking with you today about this.
Oh, as I mentioned in the opening, one of the things I discovered, a number of the first shows were all about physical. All about muscle tone or whatever it is, anything physical. And then discovered that, my goodness, past traumas play a big part into the body healing and understanding why certain parts of us, no matter what we do physically, maybe just aren't responding quite as well as we'd like. And so today we're going to talk about trauma and the understanding of that. But tell us a little bit about your story, but first define narcissism for those who aren't familiar with the term.
Yes. So narcissism is narcissistic personality disorder is a legitimate disorder, and that particularly needs to be diagnosed by a professional. And that's like a whole series of tests and things that are done to determine that. But all narcissists have a series of character traits that any of us can exhibit. And so we all can be selfish. We all can tell a lie. We all can lack empathy at times in our lives. But for people who have narcissistic personality disorder, and that's actually become their personality, their way of being all the time, consistently, they exhibit those traits all the time. So many of the traits include being entitled. believing that everything has to do with them or has to be about them in some way. They believe that they're smarter than everybody else, wealthier than everybody else, better than everybody else. They want to be looked up to and revered and appreciated always. They have no remorse for hurting other people. They have no empathy for other people. They literally can't put themselves in somebody else's shoes. So that's very cruel for people who experience that kind of abuse. They think that they're perfect, and they will often refuse to take responsibility or give a genuine apology if they are in the wrong. They literally see it as a threat to their superiority, their grandiosity, their entitlement. So they'll give you the faux apology, right? Gee, sorry you feel that way, instead of legitimately validating how somebody else experiences their behavior. They have a tendency to lie very easily and quite often. They will lie whenever it serves them. They don't have any problem doing that. And they'll make up stories. They'll twist and turn facts to make themselves look better or for their benefit.
I can't imagine what it is to have a parent like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when you're born into something, you think it's normal.
I know. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I could tell you stories all day long about like the outlandish things that my mother would tell me or talk about. And even say to other people while I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, that didn't happen. That's not right. But, like she's off and running. And of course, you don't want to call out the narcissist, because then the wrath comes down on you because you have damaged their mask. You damage their persona that they're putting on for other people. So they're literally like a Jekyll and Hyde. They on the outside, they give this performance, this appearance that they're a great person. They want to help people, and they're caring and empathetic and kind and generous. And then behind closed doors, or if you happen to get on the other side of them, you find out that's not what they're like at all.
When did you first figure this out? I mean, obviously it was your mother, so you were born into it. And as I mentioned, I think most people think their family, at least at a young age, is the way it's supposed to be. When did you all of a sudden have your own, like, am I the only one experiencing this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I have to say, Sharon, I'm so grateful we're having this conversation and that people are listening and learning about it, because I didn't know about it for most of my life. And I literally didn't put two and two together until I was about 45 years old. So most of my life, my mother has driven me crazy. She, spending time with her, put me in a spin for weeks. Sometimes it would take me weeks to calm my nervous system after spending a couple of days with her. And I could never put my finger on what was the deal with my mom until the last time I went to visit her, which was about 6 years ago. And I noticed that she kept turning the conversation back to herself. Anytime something would come up, a subject, or I would tell her about something in my life, all of a sudden the conversation got shifted around, and I was listening to her talk about herself for like 45 minutes. And I'm thinking, how did we get here? And why does this always happen? And so I literally Googled it in the moment. People who turn the conversation back to themselves. Because I was curious. I'm like, why does she always do this? And
what's interesting to me, Pi, is because I think at some probably smaller level, we all do that. You tell me a story, I tell you a story. You tell me a story, I tell you a story. But this is much bigger and more all-encompassing than just that kind of thing where like, oh yeah, I know what you mean, blah, 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 blah.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, this was a pattern with my mother for forever. So like sometimes when she would call me, I would set the phone down and I would walk away for half an hour.
Oh,
And
like
I would
those comedy shows where somebody goes, yeah, I'm on, and sets the phone down.
and I would come back. She would still be talking about herself.
Oh my. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not just like, oh, I'm excited and I want to share something, and have a conversation with you. It's all about me.
Yes.
We're not going to talk
about the intensity and the length instead of the normal conversation where you're telling me about your holiday event and I was, oh yeah, we did this on our holiday. It's not like that. It's all about them. There's no give and take.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she would walk away when I would talk to her about me.
Oh dear.
She'd literally walk out of the room, or she'd turn on the TV and she wouldn't look at me. I'd be trying to show her a picture or something and she wouldn't look at me, and she'd have this smirk on her face like, don't care about you.
Yeah, you said you were about 45 years old when the light bulb finally became and you were able to put a label on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you began to explore this, did you notice other things about your being, maybe even your body's well-being that you realized happened because of this upbringing and this unusual environment?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I made the connection, I started to realize that growing up day after day, month after month, year after year, living and being raised by somebody who operated this way and treated me and other people this way, that had a profound effect on me. And so I started investigating how it affected me. And I just started to uncover more and more and more and more. And what's relevant to your show and your audience is that I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease with Hashimoto's hypothyroid. Mm-hmm.
Hashimoto's thyroiditis.
Yeah.
Just like all other autoimmune words, great big long words.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had been diagnosed with that like years before. And when I really dove into this recovery work around reclaiming myself after experiencing so many years of emotional and psychological abuse, I realized that the disorder was associated with my throat chakra, my throat energy center, and me speaking my truth and sharing my voice with the world. I lived most of my life shrunk up and quiet and didn't want to make waves and didn't speak up, didn't say when things were good, didn't say when things were wrong, just didn't really use my voice or engage with my, like the power of being a sovereign being. Because I think growing up with a narcissist, you become enmeshed in a very dysfunctional and toxic relationship. And so it wasn't okay for me to speak up as a child. And I had very low self-esteem because I was just continually put down and, discarded and, demoralized. And so I didn't have a high sense of esteem or even like self-worthiness. And I didn't even realize I didn't have it because, like you said, it's normal. You think that's, you're just like, oh, well, this is just the way I am. But once I started doing this work, I recognized, well, that's why I'm the way I am. That's why.
Now you say this work. Let's describe some of what this work is.
Yeah. So my journey started with recognizing like, wow, okay, my mother has these narcissistic traits and tendencies. And I say she's malignant because she actually enjoys inflicting pain on other people. She actually enjoys it. It gives her a rush of power and control. And so when I started diving into learning about narcissistic abuse, that's usually the first step, I think, for most people, is like, what is this? But the second step, I mean, you can only look at that for so long before it really comes down to us, right? It's like, well, what can I do? I can't change that person. I can't fix that person, and I can't go back and I can't change the past. But what I can do is start working on my own worthiness and recognizing and accepting that, like, I have worthiness. And if you've been a victim of narcissistic abuse, you have worthiness, and our worthiness is value. So, we want to be valued by others. We get to start by valuing ourselves. And narcissists will only value people for as long as they can get something from them. So they don't really value other people. They value what they can get from other people. So when we recognize that we're more than what we can do for other people, that we just inherently are valuable because we are, not because of what other people can get from us, and we hold ourselves in high esteem, meaning, we respect and love ourselves, then we won't fall for manipulation and tricks from narcissistic people.
And understanding that we still have agency over ourselves, that we can do things for other people because we want to,
yes.
Which is different than being manipulated, shamed, blamed, guilted, any of those lovely words, into being forced to do something. And I'll just put out the idea of boundaries there.
Yeah.
Narcissistic people have a really expert skill in pushing boundaries.
Yes, they do. And if you've been in a long-term narcissistic relationship, that sense of self-worth has been eroded, and the courage to hold boundaries with other people also gets eroded. And I didn't even know what a boundary was.
Well, it makes sense. If people are born into certain situations, they don't even know that there's been trauma until they're out in, I'll just say, on their own in their own environment, and they look back over there observing from this third party position, going, okay, now that's not normal. That's not how I want to be. That's not how I want to live.
Yeah.
And then, as you did, go on this journey of self-discovery, of uncovering what happened, and then uncovering how can I choose to live a different life.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people who grew up with emotional abuse or narcissistic abuse end up with people-pleasing tendencies, like me, afraid to say no. So agreeing to things that they don't really want because they believe on some level that by saying no or asserting how they really feel or what they really want, that there's going to be some kind of devastating consequence. And if that is your experience, it would make sense. That would be how you would operate in the world. But unfortunately, when we deplete ourselves like that, it affects our health on all levels.
Another one that comes to mind, and we'll take a quick commercial break and then we'll dive back into this, is the other one that comes to mind. I just want to throw out for you guys in the community just to ponder, is not only about this idea of our own self-worth, but perfectionism plays into it too. If I could just be perfect, if I could just do exactly what this person wanted. So there's lots of things that we do to cope that can bring about unwellness, and I'll put dis-ease with a hyphen in there, and that can manifest then in true disease. So we'll be right back.
Life Interrupted Radio will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star Reader's Favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there. Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com, and I'm here with Pi Venus Winslow, and she is the author of the book Mother Medusa, Weaving Myth, Ritual, and Magic into Healing from a Narcissistic Upbringing. And we've been talking about what it's like to be born into an environment that does not really conducive to someone's own wellness and well-being, such as with a narcissistic parent, and understanding codependency and narcissistic abuse and how that can play into physical traumas and physical disease in our life. Now, Pi, thank you for sharing your story. I want to dive in to some things that you did as you began to uncover and realize that performance anxiety, perfectionism, and I'm trying to remember the other one you mentioned.
There's boundaries, self-worthiness, connection to self.
What are some things that as you began to uncover going, oh, check that box, what are some things you began to do with yourself to help transform to what you want it to be? To who you want.
Yeah, thank you. That's that is the $1 million question, right? Like, what do we do to recover when we've had these experiences? And I think,
and especially when we think they're normal.
Yeah.
I mean, as a child, it's to me, when it comes from early in childhood, especially parents, it's almost like you're rewriting the whole book.
Yeah.
It's different than if an adult going through some sort of experience, you've got a frame of reference.
Right. I think for me on my journey, the first couple of months I spent learning about narcissism, but I also spent a lot of time grieving. A lot of time grieving.
Oh, grieving.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you said breathing. And I thought, well, that's a good one too.
Oh, no.
Breathing and grieving both work.
Yes. Yeah. Well, breathing through with your lungs and oxygen is a good way to move through grief. And so that's definitely, there was a lot of breathing and grieving, but I mean, a lot of coming to terms with reality. You know, as children, our brains aren't fully developed. We don't really understand or can make sense of complex adult situations. And a lot of times when we experience things that are really just too much for us, we box them up and put them away, or we forget they even happened. And so for me, the first couple of months was starting to remember things that I had forgotten and coming to terms with stories that I had told myself about my family and about things being normal. and learning like what is a healthy relationship and what is love. What is love? If you grow up in a family where somebody's abusing you, but they're also telling you, I love you, and you're a child and you're like, okay, well, this is what love is. What happens is we recreate those relationships later in life. And certainly it was a reckoning for me to recognize that I had done that too, that I had two failed marriages. I had like a string of other relationships with people that had blown up, dysfunctional work environments, toxic work environments, things like that. So I had ended up recreating these situations because they were familiar to me. And I didn't see the connection at the time. So it's a lot of unraveling at first. And then once we recognize, okay, these are the limiting beliefs that I have, that I operate from, and I want to change those beliefs. So replacing the beliefs that we no longer want to hang on to with the ones that are going to help us live a happier, healthier life. And it's a lifelong journey.
Oh, absolutely. To me, understanding the difference between you can know something and the old belief can still pop up every so often. It's not just as easy as delete, replace.
Right. It takes time and awareness and practice. And so just like with any new habit, when establishing a new habit it's kind of retraining ourselves. We've got to be aware and learn how to catch ourselves when the old belief comes back up, or when something happens in our lives and we look at that and we're like, I wonder why that happened. Why did I do that? Why did I make that choice? Why did I say that? And being aware and then recognizing like, oh, like you said, there's that old limiting belief. Okay, here's another way that showed up. What am I going to do instead? What am I going to reaffirm to myself instead? And I think language plays a big part in this discovery of recognizing what are my limiting beliefs. Right? If you hear yourself saying things like, I'm stupid, or that'll never work for me, or I have to do this thing. And it's like, that tells you what your beliefs are.
Yeah. As an adult, I've heard people say things like, if I don't do it, I'll get in trouble. I'm like, I'm just going to throw out a number. You're 50 years old. What do you mean get in trouble? These kinds of ideas that hold them back. And just want to circle back for a second. As you were talking about, you were noticing these patterns in your life, and you mentioned a series of things that had gone less than the way you wanted them to. And I had a dear friend years and years ago. We were out for a walk, and I too was going through a period of reevaluating things and listing off a few things that didn't go the way I wanted. And it was such an interesting reframe. My friend stopped me and looked at me in all seriousness and said, well, you know what the common denominator to this problem is, don't you? And I did not know. I mean, that I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, you're the constant and all these others are the variables in there.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my moment of reckoning of past patterns and past behaviors, is to realize, well, if the change is going to happen, it has to come from me.
Yeah. Well, and thank goodness that you have a friend that loves you enough to be honest with you, give you that feedback.
I'm a firm believer. I've got two kinds of friends and I love them both. But when I need the honest truth, I've got friends that'll tell me, yeah, you look fat in that. I love those kinds of friends. They're just like, lay it on the line. This is what I'm hearing, and this is how I'm understanding what I'm hearing. And then I've got other friends who are like, no, you look great in that. And sometimes you need those too, but it's good. Just know which ones are which, and don't get it mixed up when you're going to which one for which, because sometimes you need people that they may not be accurate either, but at least they give you another perspective, a place to at least start the journey outside of your own belief and go, oh, I didn't know you could see it that way.
Yeah. And that is so important on this journey. I think for me, starting to surround myself with people who had a different perspective on things, that were able to give me feedback, were able to teach me about things that I didn't know about. Like, healthy relationship. What's a healthy relationship? How do I set boundaries? How do I learn how to hold myself in high esteem? And learning from them and getting their feedback helped me. That was invaluable on my journey, because if you were never taught how to do something, there's no way you can know how to do it.
If someone was to ask you, Pi, like, what would be the first, I know you're a life coach too, so I'm just going to ask you, if somebody said, okay, I don't know how to do it, what would be the first step in unraveling this to even consider that I'm worthy? What are some things you would tell people? Like, okay, here's the first tip.
Yeah, well, I think I would have a conversation with them so that I could help paint a picture for them that they could really relate to, about like where the worthiness was deficient, right? So for me, a real like eye-opening moment was me recognizing like, wow, I got in this relationship with this person and I let them, I agreed to do all of these things that I didn't want to do, that ended up causing me to feel shame and bad about myself. And so the consequence of doing that, right, was me not trusting myself, not trusting myself to speak up. Mm-hmm. So when I realized I didn't trust myself, I thought about all of the other ways that I had hurt myself or let myself down, to making unhealthy life choices. I always thought that I thought I was a strong person and I thought that I loved myself. But when I got really honest, like you said, like, what's the common denominator here? When I got really honest, I could see that I didn't love myself because of the way I treated myself, because of the choices that I made, and how those things harmed my physical health, my emotional health, my spiritual health. So that was when I was like, well, I don't hold myself in high esteem. That actually makes me more susceptible to be victimized again by other people, because those are the easiest targets. And narcissists look for people with low self-esteem because they can easily manipulate them. As soon as, this is my life story. It's so sad. And when I think about it, I'm sorry for the younger version of myself, but I was so starved for attention and affection and validation that anybody who would pay attention to me was a potential mate, mm-hmm. even if it was like not a safe person.
I think that's a story that a lot of people fall into. And I'm thinking about, we've had Sarah Payton on, and she talks about the neurobiology of trauma and healing. And one thing that she taught me early on was, we all have this little radar in our head going around. And the first question it asks is, am I safe? And we all define safe completely differently than others. And especially being raised by a narcissistic parent, safe is a very different word. And then the next one is, do I matter? And I have thought about those as how they've shifted since Sarah taught me that, 6 years ago or something. I've thought about how using those two ideas about, do I matter and how do I matter, and the things about me that do matter, and how we can incorporate those into how we define ourselves for ourselves. And I think that's the critical thing, is how do we define ourselves for ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what's really valuable in that space in between is compassion for ourselves and the mistakes that we've made, the things that we didn't know. There's a lot of us carry shame and guilt around who we are because of who we were told we were. And so having compassion for those younger parts of ourselves that were wounded, abandoned, betrayed, it goes a long way to just opening the possibility that we can get more anchored into our own value and worthiness. And I think finding people in your life that are going to support you and tell you that and show you that is critical.
Well, we'll talk about that when we come back from our final commercial break here, because I think it's, from what I've viewed, is it's kind of a tough place to start because we only know one pattern. How do we know we're not falling back into that pattern when we're saying the people that we can trust, and we're rewriting the whole script? Could be you're rewriting a whole years and years of a script. So we'll be right back to find out how we can rewrite that script and learn more about her book, Mother Medusa. We'll be right back.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Do you want to be a better leader, have better relationships, become more self-aware, be a better communicator? Hi, I'm Sharon Sayler, best-selling author, professional speaker, and executive coach. And my life passion is empowering professionals to be the best that they can be. After years of working with professionals, I've discovered the 7 things nobody is telling you that can cost you your clients, sales, and even your career. And I want to give it to you free. You've heard my show, you know my passion, and maybe we'll be working together sooner rather than later. So go grab this ebook now to find out the 7 things that's costing you big time over at SharonSayler.com/radio gift. Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And tonight we're here with Pi Venus Winslow, and she's a published author of Mother Medusa, Weaving Myth, Ritual, and Magic into Healing from a Narcissistic Upbringing. And she's a public speaker and a transformational life coach for those recovering from a narcissistic upbringing. And we've been talking about her own story and what is narcissism. Now, let's just say we're at this point where we're like checking off those boxes. And we're going, okay, maybe we're saying, I haven't ever had a normal relationship. How do I, trust myself that this person here is, I'm going to put in air quotes, normal? I mean, I'm kind of wondering how these foggy first steps of our journey into worthiness and self-worth and recovery.
That's a good question. And I believe that, if you're at a place in your life where you're recognizing like, wow, I'm seeing all of these connections and I'm wanting to make some different choices in my life. Like I want to improve my self-esteem. I want to sharpen and strengthen my boundaries. And I want to have healthy relationships. It all starts with ourselves first. And so, yes, we want to have those things with others, but we've got to do we've got to heal ourselves first. So if we don't trust ourselves, we've got to start doing things to learn how to trust ourselves. And that means keeping our word and our promises to ourselves. When I say, I'm not going to do this thing, and then I make up an excuse and I go and I do the thing. What I'm doing is I'm telling myself I can't trust myself. There's a subconscious message, that you don't matter. What you want and what is good for you doesn't matter. There's another part of us that's going to make a different choice. And these are habits that we've gotten into over a period of time. So we all know, we pretend we don't know. One of my favorite questions is, what am I pretending not to know?
Oh, that's a great question. I think we should put that in a journal there. What am I pretending not to know? It's a great question.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we are brutally honest with ourselves, and that's what this work requires us to dig deep and to be really honest and truthful. It's like, well, what do I do that I know harms me? And am I going to stop doing those things? Am I going to make a commitment and a promise to myself, from now on, I'm not going to drink soda, or I'm going to get up and go for a walk and move my body, or I'm going to make that doctor's appointment, or I'm going to do something healthy and good for myself, and then consistently show up and do that, because we've been taught not to have boundaries, right? Or to not honor boundaries. And we end up not doing that with ourselves. And it creates that it's almost like a toxic relationship with ourselves. And I think this is why so many people who experience childhood trauma and abuse suffer, with addictions, because they don't believe they're worth it. They're on a quest to destroy themselves because they don't like themselves.
Do they know they don't like themselves? Because here again, if you're raised in that environment, is that feeling like you don't like yourself normalized? This is an interesting conundrum that we find ourselves in as you're trying to escape from.
Yeah, it is.
From the past.
It is. And I think, again, I think it's just getting brutally honest. And I think when we're ready to see, when we're ready to shine that light on what we're pretending to not know, when we're ready to shine the light on it and actually look at it and go, yeah, this closet is a mess. It's full of a lot of stuff. And, am I going to close the door and pretend it's not there and just keep living my life and doing the same thing over and over again? Or am I going to roll up my sleeves and start tossing out all of this stuff that no longer serves me to make space to bring in what's going to make my life better? And I was 45 years old until I was ready to do that. I knew along the way, I knew there were things I was doing in my life. I knew I was making some bad decisions. I saw connections along the way, but I wasn't ready to really unpack it until life circumstances hit me hard enough. And I think that's true for a lot of people. It's like the hero or the heroine's journey. There comes a point when it's like, we're going on the quest, whether we're kicking and screaming, or we accept our fate and we decide to take that journey.
And for many people, it turns out to be an autoimmune diagnosis is that moment of where the quest becomes doggone serious.
Yeah, because then it becomes a life or death situation.
And that's the interesting part to me, is that I'm just on my own private quest for people to understand it's not just about going to medical professionals and getting the physical part healed, that there's a lot behind it that can exacerbate. It may not have caused it. I want to say, I'm not a scientist here, but in all the years of doing over 350 episodes, discovered that there are lots of things that can happen in the world that can cause the body to shut down or withhold things, tighten up, stress, sleep disturbance, all of those sorts of things are reactions to our emotions.
Exactly. And so, narcissistic abuse, emotional abuse, there's a lot of energy that is bound up and blocked up, which I think, I believe to the core of my being manifests in different ways in our body. And I think the good news is that by making a commitment to do this work and to start clearing out the stuff in the closet that no longer serves you, you can get better in so many ways. And I I have had an experience where my doctor has, sent me in for blood tests for my thyroid, and the results come back and she's like, that's strange. Your dosage is too high now. We're going to need to lower your dosage. Let's do that and check back in a month or two. And then I come back in a month or two. She's like, it's still too high. We need to lower it again. I don't have an explanation for this. I don't know why this is happening. And I'm thinking, well, I have an explanation. I'm healing myself. I'm doing this work. I'm speaking up. I'm freeing this energy that's been stuck in my body for so long. And through moving that, I'm like, my thyroid is actually starting to work a little better again. And I'm still on medication, but less medication. And I'm continuing to strive to see, like, well, what can I do? How much can I heal myself?
And I love that. One of my favorite phrases is, your diagnosis is not your identity. And I love that you are moving through the diagnosis and making sure that it stays just that, out there. It's not your identity, because sometimes when we're raised in an environment that devalues us, it's easy to take other labels on, even without us being aware. And a label such as sickness or, autoimmune or whatever the label is, it's an easy trap to fall into and become whatever your version of that place is. And instead of just being a survivor, instead of what I like to call a thriver.
Yeah.
That regardless of your diagnosis, you can have a thriving life.
Absolutely. And I think what you're saying is so important, is to recognize I am not what happened to me, or I'm not my diagnosis. And for me, it's not, I'm not my past. I'm not a victim of narcissistic abuse. I have now rewritten my story, and I'm thriving. I'm learning how to love myself. I'm learning how to express myself. I'm learning how to tell the truth. I'm learning how to stand up for, my boundaries, what's right and what I don't want, and not allowing that in my life. That's an agreement that I've made with myself. So when kind of circle back to what we were talking about before, I think when you learn how to trust yourself, and you learn that you're connected to yourself enough to know, like those questions you asked, am I safe and am I worthy? And you can honestly answer them, then you don't need to worry so much about other people. You just keep the focus on yourself. You stay in your own lane, and the choices that you make, is this going to help me or is it going to harm me? It becomes easier to make those decisions, and you trust yourself to do that. And that's how we start rewriting our story and transforming our lives. And over time, it just starts to show up everywhere else in our lives.
Well, time flies by when we're together. We're down to just the last 5 minutes. Tell us a little bit about your book, Mother Medusa, Weaving Myth, Ritual, and Magic into Healing from a Narcissistic Upbringing. I know we've talked about the topic as a whole, but tell us a little bit about why this book.
Yeah, so I wrote this book. Well, I wrote it, one, because through analyzing, my own experience, I saw my story in myth, in the story of, the hero's journey or the heroine's journey. And I've always been fascinated with mythology ever since I was young. So this felt like a good way for me to tell a story about my experience growing up with a narcissistic mother, the effects that it had on me, and how I learned how to, radically transform my life and start living in integrity with myself and other people. So this book weaves together that myth of Medusa and talks about my process of healing, which was ritual, changing the way I did things, creating affirmations, getting more in tune with my spirituality, getting more in tune with myself, connecting with myself. And through the practice of doing that on a regular basis, I started to change my belief systems, and my life started to change and get better. And so that was the beginning of my journey. And my goodness, so much has happened since then. It's been quite a ride, but I'm so grateful for it.
Oh, fantastic. Now, where can people get the book?
So the book's available. You can get it off of my website, which is fullvenusrising.com.
The link will be up at understandingautoimmune.com, as well as we'll share it in social media over at Facebook as Understanding Autoimmune. Now, I know you also have a global community dedicated to helping people with the wounds from childhood and narcissistic abuse. So tell us a little bit about your Full Venus Rising community.
Yeah. So I, when I first started my journey, I thought I was the only person in the world who had to put some serious boundaries down with my mother and not engage with her anymore. And I thought, who divorces their mother? Who does that? Like, nobody talks about that. And I think that's why it can be really hard for people who experience abuse in families. It's like, we're supposed to stick with our families, and ending an abusive relationship with a family member, people don't seem to understand that. And I heard a lot of that myself, like, well, she's your mother, but it's like that was something that I needed to do. So I created this community for other people so that they aren't thinking like I'm the only one, right? And I've got, thousands of people in this community who can resonate with the effects of growing up with a narcissistic parent, and they're all on their own journey to recovery. So the community is a way for me to connect with people, to provide resources, training, and support to others on their recovery journey.
Oh, fantastic. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I know that it's not an easy one to share, but it's definitely one that we need for people to understand, and that it is much more common than we think. And so everyone, that's Pi Venus Winslow. She's the author of Mother Medusa, Weaving Myth, Ritual, and Magic into Healing from a Narcissistic Upbringing. And we'll have her link over at understandingautoimmune.com, as well as on all our social medias. So everyone, have a great week, whatever your adventure, and join me next week for another brand new episode. Enjoy.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.
Research shows we apologize up to 10 times a day, and most of the time, we say sorry as a response to someone else's mistake. What if we thanked people instead of all that unnecessary apologizing? So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, you say, thank you for listening. Join us at projectforgive.com, a free, non-religious resource on global forgiveness.